Hi everybody, welcome to another Yarn Scrap Friday with me, Laura, and in today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to make these teeny tiny little gnomes. So for this tutorial we're going to be using a sport baby weight yarn, but you can use any weight yarn that you like. This is a yarn weight of 2 and I'm using a green and a red, so it's kind of a Christmassy festive little gnome, a skin colour and some white as well, but you can use any colours that you like. With that weight yarn I'm using a 2mm crochet hook. This is going to be a fiddly one, but you can make it in a thicker yarn, and you're also going to need a pair of scissors and a yarn needle as well. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, so we're going to start off with the green yarn. So this is the sort of body colour yarn, and we're going to, I did a magic ring for the other ones, but I think I'll do a chain 4 loop because it's a little bit easier for beginners, but you can use a magic loop if you prefer. But we're going to do a slip knot and we're going to chain 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. So I wouldn't say this is a particularly beginner friendly project, but never say never. We're going to put our hook into our first chain, bring the yarn through and bring it straight through the loop on your hook. And we've got a tiny little loop of chains, and into there we're going to work 8 single crochets. This pattern's in US terminology, so in UK terms that's going to be 8 double crochet, but we're going to start off with a little chain 1. Don't count that as a stitch, just helps with leverage. And we're going to put our hook into the middle, so be careful not to put it into the first chain. And like I said, you can work 8 single crochet into a magic ring if you prefer, that's fine. Bring the yarn through, then just wrapping it around the chains, we work a single crochet, and we want 8 of those. So that's 1, 2, and 7, and the last one 8. Okay, so we've got 8 single crochet. Because I carried the tail end, I should be able to just pull that to bring in the center hole a little bit, but you can always sew the hole closed if it's too big. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch into our first single crochet. So slip stitch into there. Okay, so hopefully it looks like this. Now it does get pretty fiddly. We're going to do some back post stitches. If you're not too good with back post stitches, you can just work into the back loops only. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a little chain 1 to begin. And we're going to go into the same stitch we just slip stitched into, but rather than going from the front, we're going to come from the back. Try and do this on camera. Come from the back, and then we're going to go into the next stitch from the front, and you end up catching this little one bit of yarn this side. We're going to grab the yarn and just bring it through that second stitch and through that first stitch, and then we're going to work a single crochet, and that's a single crochet back post stitch, and we're going to do one of those in each stitch around, so we've still got a stitch count of 8. So the next one, we go into that second stitch, but from the back, not the front, and then into the third stitch from the front. Again, bring the yarn through both stitches, and that one's gone stringy, so let's try that again. So into that second stitch from the back, third stitch from the front, bring the yarn through, that's better, and work a single crochet. Then the next one would be into the third stitch, but from the back this time, then into the fourth stitch from the front, grab the yarn. So just work 1 single crochet back post stitch in each stitch around. Okay, then coming up to the last one, it's a good idea to count as you go so you know how many you've got. You've only got 1 stitch left, but we're going to go in from the back and then we're going to come through our previous slip stitch, or the fake stitch as I call it. So just make sure you've got 8 of these single crochet back post stitches. Okay, and then we're going to find, you need to turn your work slightly to a 90-degree angle. You're going to find your first single crochet here, and we're going to slip stitch into there. And what that does is it just creates a really nice 90-degree angle, so it sits nice and flat on the bottom. Okay, then what we're going to do is a little chain one. Again, don't count that as a stitch. Going to go into the same stitch we just slip stitched into, and we're going to work one single crochet in each stitch around, keeping a stitch count of 8 and just work into them as normal. I'm going to do that for 2 rounds. Okay, 2 rounds of just one single crochet in each stitch around. Okay. Okay, just coming up to the last stitch on the second round. And then we're going to find our first single crochet and slip stitch into there, which we would have done on the first round as well. We've got this tiny little pot shape. And what we're going to do is we're just going to trim down our tail end and stick that inside. Just bring up a loop. Keep your working yarn out of the way and just tuck that tail end on the inside. You can add a tiny bit of stuffing if you want to. Maybe I even put in that bit I just cut off. And then what we're going to do is we're going to join our red yarn. So this will be our hat colour. So here's a little Christmassy, festive-y gnome, so red and green. Okay, so I'm going to join the red yarn with a chain one. And now we're working with the red yarn. And what we're going to do to create the hat is the first thing we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch in each stitch around. So we're going to go back into that stitch we just slip stitched into and work a slip stitch. So fiddly to do on camera. And we're going to work one slip stitch in each stitch around. Okay. And the last slip stitch, 8. So you should still have a stitch count of 8. And why is it as soon as I go back on camera it goes wrong? And then we're going to slip stitch into our first red slip stitch to join the round. Okay, right. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut our green yarn so we don't get tangled with the green yarn. And what I like to do is just bring up a red loop, take these 2 tail ends, the red and the green, and just tie a knot. Nice secure knot. And then we're going to, keeping your working yarn out of the way, we're just going to tuck those on the inside as well. And it all helps as stuffing. Okay, so rejoining our hook. What we're going to do now is we're going to chain 6. We're going to chain 6. Let's chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we're going to chain 6 and we're going to work a slip stitch in our second chain from our hook. So we don't count the loop on our hook. There's our first chain, there's our second chain. Just trying to understand my own pattern. Slip stitch into there. And we're going to slip stitch into the next chain as well. Then in the next chain, we're going to do a single crochet. And then in the last 2 chains should have 2 left. We're going to do a half double crochet. So that'll be a half treble in UK terms. So a half double crochet in the next chain, pull through all 3, and a half double crochet in that last chain as well. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to skip the next stitch, this slip stitch, and we're going to slip stitch into the next slip stitch. Okay, so we skip one and then slip stitch in the next stitch. We're going to then slip stitch in the next stitch as well. So we skip one, slip stitch in the next 2 basically. Then we're going to turn our work and we're going to skip the previous 2 slip stitches we made, and we're going to work a half double crochet in that next stitch. then a half double crochet in the next stitch, and then a single crochet in the next stitch, and then we're going to slip stitch in the last 2 stitches. And if it's too hard to work into those stitches, just work into the front loop. It's absolutely fine, whatever is easiest. So we're just going to slip stitch in those last 2 stitches. Okay, now we're back at the top, and what we're going to do is we're going to do a chain 1, and we're going to turn our work, and we're going to skip the chain 1 and work a slip stitch in those first 2 stitches again. So a slip stitch in there, slip stitch in there, and just matching up the stitches again. The next stitch we do a single crochet, and then in the last 2 stitches we do half double crochets. So a half double crochet in the next stitch and a half double crochet in the next stitch. Then again we're going to skip the next stitch on the main body and slip stitch in the next stitch. Okay, then we're going to slip stitch in the next stitch as well, and turn our work. Then we skip the last 2 slip stitches, and again in the next stitch we're going to do a half double crochet, half double crochet in the next stitch, single crochet in the next stitch, and we slip stitch in the last 2 as best as we can. All gets a little bit fiddly. Then the last row we chain 1 and turn. We skip the chain 1 and work a slip stitch in the first 2 stitches. Single crochet in the next stitch, and half double crochets in the last 2 stitches. So half double crochet in there and half double crochet in that last stitch. Okay, and then on the main body we still have 1 stitch left. We're going to skip that. Then in this previous slip stitch, you may have to bring up your yarn a little bit, we're going to slip stitch into there. Okay. Okie dokie. So then what we're going to do is we're going to cut our yarn, leave a little bit of a tail for sewing, pull that yarn through, and what we're going to do is get our yarn needle and we are going to sew this hat closed. So just matching up the 2 sides, I'm going to go from one side to the other and just sew the edge of our hat closed up to the top. Okay, so there is our hat finished, and we can just hide our tail end neatly. Trim down. Okay, and what we're going to do now is we're going to make his little nose. So we're just going to put that down to the side. We're going to bring in a skin colour, and we are going to chain 6. Okay, so do a little slip knot, and we're just going to chain 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And that's it. We're going to cut our yarn, leave a little bit of a tail for sewing. Just pull that loop through. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our yarn needle. You may have seen this before in other patterns. We're going to turn our chains over, so we hide the V's, and on the back we have these little vertical bars, hopefully, and we're going to sew into those. So we're going to go into that first vertical bar, just gently sew into there, then find the next one and go in the opposite direction. And the next one in the opposite direction. You should have 6 of them for your 6 chains. Do this all the way down to the bottom. And then what you want to do is just pull, and it should create a little bundle of chains and stitches. So just pull that nice and tight, it drawstrings it closed, and then we're going to sew into the top again, just to bring that into a little ball and then pull. And you should end up with this tiny little, just a ball of chains. And we're going to sew that onto just literally where the red joins the green. We're going to sew that into our little character. And if you sew both ends in, it should look something like this. Ta-da! And then we're just going to hide our tail ends. Okay, so he looks like this now, and all that's left to do now is to create his little beard. So we're going to get some white yarn, and to make his beard, we're making some picots. So what we're going to do is we're going to again do our slip knot, and we're going to chain 6. Let's chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we chain 6, and we're going to slip stitch into our 4th chain from our hooks. We don't count the loop on a hook. There's chain 1, 2, 3, 4. So in number 4, we're going to do a slip stitch. Then we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to slip stitch in that same 4th chain again. Okay, then we're going to slip stitch in the next chain and repeat that. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, slip stitch in the same chain. Then we have 1 chain left. We're going to slip stitch in the last chain. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and slip stitch in that last chain again. And you should end up with 4 picots. Okay, so you've got 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is a little bit smaller. Then we cut our yarn, again leaving a little bit for sewing. Let's pull that loop through. And then all that's left to do is to sew this onto our little gnome. So we're going to take the last tail end that we had, and we're just going to sew over to where the other tail end is, here. Just to neaten that off. And this little small curve here is what's going to fit under his nose. And you just want to sew literally right next to his nose on the right hand side. Just bring that over, and then wrapping that under his little nose, we're going to come through to the other side of his nose and grab the yarn on the other side to secure that into place. Then we're just going to go back in where that came out. And there is our little beard. So we're just going to tidy up these other tail ends, hide these tail ends, and then our gnome is done. So I shall just do that, then I'll come back. And there we go, there's our tiny little finished gnome, and you can just neaten up his beard a little bit, make it a bit more even. and he can join his friends. And because of the flat base, he should stand up. If we flatten that down, he should just stand up nicely with his other little gnomey friends. And there we go. I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. I hope you managed to follow along. If you found this too fiddly, you don't have to make it as small as this. You can use the exact same pattern, but with a much thicker yarn. If you remember my little Halloween kitty from a few weeks ago, I completely recreated that pattern, identical pattern, but I used a plushy yarn. And it's made an absolutely adorable little kitty. So it's always worth experimenting with different weight yarns for these patterns. But I will see you soon for some more crochet crafting fun. A huge thank you as always to our monthly subscribers for helping make these videos possible. If you'd like to know more about our monthly subscription on Happy Berry Plus, we have a magazine, we have a podcast, behind the scenes, exclusive content, so it's worth checking out and help support Happy Berry. But I will see you soon for some more crochet crafting fun. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.